which is very helpful. And it's showing Dr. Westman is adding right now. So hopefully that will kick in real soon here. Yes, I see that he's joined, and it's showing that he's being added. Hey, James. Okay, well. Let me try again. We'll get this, guys. Just be patient. You guys are awesome. Okay, it's showing he's adding again, so maybe it's going to work this time. Fingers crossed. It's always fun getting these little technical things showing he's going to be like, yay! Thank you, Dr. Westman. Appreciate it. Welcome.
We finally solved that.
Yes, thank you so very much. Well, Dr. Westman, Keto San Antonio and San Antonio in general, we are all so thrilled that you're going to be coming to San Antonio and sharing your wonderful information with us on October the 19th. We're thrilled.
Well, I can't wait to be there. Been to San Antonio a few times for obesity medicine meetings, and this one is going to be just about the keto diet, to connect keto experts in the community to keto followers. It's a pretty amazing experience to be amongst 100 to 200 people like you who have been following a keto diet. If you haven't experienced that, I really encourage you to come.
Well, we're thrilled, and just personally have to share, you are one of those folks that really helped turn my health around. I started keto about a year and a half ago, and I have not lost all of my weight ketogenically, but I've lost about 185 pounds in total now. Completely turned my health around, and I'm very grateful for all of the help and the information that you've provided along the years. So, very grateful. Thank you.
Well, my pleasure. It's great that you. So tell me a little bit about the group, how you got started.
I started about 2017, and it began as I was looking for real life connections in San Antonio, and really thinking it would be just folks getting together and having potlucks, sharing some keto recipes, and having a good time. And I acted as facilitator, and I found that there were a lot of folks that really needed some help on understanding what keto really was. And I had originally set up Keto San Antonio Facebook page for us to communicate together for meetups, but it evolved into a means for me to kind of help educate our community and for people to connect and share. And I'm absolutely blown away that it has grown. We're, I think, somewhere in the area of like 43 or 4,400 folks now. And we have a very active and enthusiastic community. So I'm blessed that I can help bring folks like you here and help bring information to our keto community.
Great. Well, we started a support group that meets face-to-face in Durham once a month. We targeted, the first Tuesday of the month, and we've been doing that now for probably 6 or 7 years. And now about 50 to 100 people, depending on who the guest is, will show up once a month. And the hotel even puts on a buffet keto buffet for an extra fee, but they don't charge us for the room because we bring enough of the dinner business, I suppose. But that's a great way to get people together. And is your support group pretty much all Facebook now, or do you still get together face to face?
That's one of the most wonderful things is we do get together face to face. We do have get-togethers and meetings quite regularly. It's often several times a month. And then we have people that connect and make friendships. And from those friendships, there are little meetups that spin off of that. So it's a beautiful community, and I've seen so many of us grow and change our lives, and the support is wonderful. It's invaluable. So,
well, the ADAPT team has developed a way of just bringing together people. There may be people in your support group who don't know about the keto-friendly doctors or dietitians or other healthcare practitioners, and so we try to find speakers that are local and keto-friendly in the health arena. Sometimes they're support group leaders like you. Sometimes they're doctors that people in town don't know about. In fact, we've done several events now around the country, and we find that we're linking or bringing together people who want to find keto-friendly doctors. And it's not always the speakers. Sometimes the doctors are sort of lurking in the audience, if you will. And so we'll have them, just say why they're there. And one that comes to mind was up in Minnesota, and there were many connections being made of people finding a new doctor, actually. And, that's not what we're trying to do. It just kind of happens automatically, which is a lot of fun to see.
Yes, and that's a question that often comes up in Keto San Antonio. Who are the keto-friendly doctors? So I'm real excited that folks in the community are going to be able to come, and they're actually going to be able to meet doctors that they may choose to call their doctor. So very excited about that.
Other really nice thing that happens is people come and they want to tell their stories. And so an ADAPT Keto event has built in a tell your story or testimonial kind of idea so that you can be paying it forward, if you will. Like I'm sure that's your experience led you to want to create the Facebook group and share that in your experience with others. And many people have that desire, but they don't know how to start a support group, or they don't have time to do a whole lot of things. But we'll have people stand up and time permitting, tell their stories. Some people get the microphone up front for a few minutes, and that's been exciting to see as well. I came at a keto event. There's usually 150 to 200 people who come on a Saturday locally. You don't have to travel far. You don't have to pay much money. I came back from a meeting that we didn't do, but it was done in Washington, D.C. And if you can imagine, there were 700 keto followers in the same ballroom. It was a huge hotel ballroom. And, it's just electric. I mean, everyone's happy to be there. They want to share their information with each other. So I would encourage that if you're someone who has that desire to share your story with others and meet other people who are the other thing that happens is people bring their family members who might be skeptical or might not know about it yet, family, friends, that sort of thing. An ADAPT event is another way to show that there's credibility, that there's science behind the keto diet as well. So it's an interesting mix of people that I've never really seen in any other place, because it's not a medical meeting. It's not all scientific. It blends the real folk, real people with some science too, of course, just to show that it's credible. But great. Well, how can I help with questions going on in your group these days?
Yes, I appreciate that. I have a couple of questions I just wanted to run by you and see if maybe you could help us out. one of the questions that keeps resurfacing is net carbs versus total carbs. And could you share a bit about the difference in the two and your thoughts about net carbs versus total carbs?
Sure. So, just as a bit of history, there was no net carb idea until about 2003. So historically, no one ever used net carbs in the 1960s, 70s, 80s. Dr. Atkins, Dr. Eads, these were the doctors using it in their clinics and their offices. They used total carbs, not net carbs. So if you want to use the method that's been around 150 years, use total carbs. Now, net carbs came about because the way I see it is there were two things happening. There were people that didn't really need to be that strict with total carbs doing keto or doing low carb. So they didn't need to be as strict. And then the product companies were able to make a broader range of foods and products if they use net carbs and not total carbs. So the way I look at net carbs is it's not wrong. There's right, wrong. It's just not quite as strict. It's not quite as effective as the total carbs. But if you are having a problem with net carbs, if things aren't working, don't bail out and say, it didn't work for me. You go from net carbs to total carbs and then see if it works. That usually makes things work for people, even though it doesn't seem like it's a big change. It's a big change metabolically. Now, the way you calculate net carbs by subtracting the fiber and the sugar alcohols, and it's harder to do. I mean, you could use an app and all that to keep track of it, but most of my patients who come to me don't want to use an app. They don't want to do lots of calculations. So using net carbs means it's more complicated. It's harder to do, and it frustrates people, and it's not as strict or not as powerful. So I think of it as kind of the over-the-counter medicine version. It can work for a lot of people. In fact, there are a lot of people who really don't need to do a low-carb diet who are doing a low-carb diet, and they do great because they really didn't need to do it anyway. So you have to be careful where the information is coming from. When I teach the patients in my clinic, I just came from my clinic today. Sorry for being a few minutes late. The way I teach it is using total carbs, because when people sign up for my clinic, sometimes they wait 3 months to see me. They're ready for this to work, no matter what. I mean, they'll follow it, and then they want something that works the first time, every time. And so because total carbs is more effective, yes, it's stricter, but on the other hand, it's easier because you're not making these calculations. That's kind of the gist of it. It's not that net carbs is wrong, it's just not quite as strong.
That's great. And it kind of leads into this other question, which is along the same lines as the net carbs versus, the net carb issue is food ingredients. Oftentimes, as keto is gaining popularity, there's lots of new products, as you know, that are hitting the market, and they're labeled as low carb or keto. And within the community, I regularly see folks that are trying to replace the very foods that made them fat and sick in the first place with ketofied versions and processed snacks. Are you concerned at all about the proliferation of food products flooding the market in our grocery stores and claiming to be keto but containing questionable ingredients? Should people worry about ingredients or just focus on the macros?
So that's an interesting issue that some people have to worry about it and others don't. So from my perspective, I've seen lots of different people through the years with lots of different types of metabolisms, and the most powerful factor to consider is the carbohydrate macro, the amount of carbs, and we use grams of carbs, not percent or anything like that. And if you focus on keeping the carbs super low, under 20 total carbs for the day. The other issues are not so important. So it's not that they don't matter. Well, I don't know if they matter, actually, because I've had people actually eat at McDonald's and achieve their diabetes resolution, their weight loss goal. So I guess you have to remember, my perspective is from a therapeutic use of people coming to me in a clinic. They have a medical problem. They want to fix diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, anything like that. And I can do that even when someone's eating what you might consider is garbage or a carb. Now the carbs are low, but there are all these additives and things. I've even had people, eat like Atkins bars, and they do okay. I'm not a big fan of it, and as a general principle, not everyone can do that. So I'm less of a stickler, if you will, about the ingredients. Of course, that said, I helped to create a company that has made really, truly clean, low-carb keto products. So I think it's important. In fact, I'm not involved with any companies that sell all the other stuff that's involved that you can't, say the name of on the product. But I really honestly don't know how important that is compared to the carb amount. Maybe there's an added advantage of getting out all of the additives, getting rid of all of the processed, but that would make this kind of diet out of the reach of many of my patients. It would be unattainable. I mean, many of my patients are in the lower socioeconomic range, and they have no choice but to eat at a fast food place. They're in a food desert where there's no really good grocery store. From that perspective, I see people kind of doing it in a dirty keto way or a lazy keto way, and it still works. So I think the food quality emphasis was carried over from the paleo world, paleo and primal, which kind of made their mark saying you want to have clean eating and you could have more carbs, but that's because they're not metabolically ill like diabetes and overweight and obesity. So I guess I said, if you can, go to the farmer's market locally, support the grass-fed beef industry, and that's a change we want to have. But day to day, it's okay to do this without attention to that. So did I evade your question well?
Well, so really I guess to be more specific, being in Texas, one of the products that is constantly discussed is low-carb tortillas. And if you were to look at the ingredients in low-carb tortillas, most of the commercially produced tortillas contain things such as wheat and factory oils such as canola oil. And so I guess that's what I'm questioning, is your take on maybe the carbs are acceptable as far, even total carbs, some of the products are really pretty high, but it's something that concerns me is, the inflammatory properties of wheat and canola oils, factory oils. Also right now, it's the protein breads are very popular, and so those are kind of the things I was thinking of.
If you were setting up a consulting or clinic like mine that has to work, again, the most important thing is to keep the carbs low, because some people can have those tortilla wraps and do fine. Some people can have canola oil and it doesn't create much inflammation and they do fine. So keep in mind your own experience coming at this means you have to be strict about it. And that actually is a good place to come from, because you know that some people have to be really strict. But some people don't have to be. So if you get what we're seeing now is really excited young folks. Matt and Mega at Keto Connect are doing all of these cooking demos and putting it on YouTube, and my patients are watching it and say, well, they're having it, how come I can't have it? And I have to explain, well, you're not 30 years old, you're not thin, so I'm holding out as kind of the voice in the wilderness saying, I'm not sure about omega-6, omega-3, if it's really clinically relevant. I mean, in other words, from my point of view, the carb lowering does so well. And I don't tell any people to not have vegetable oils or seed oils or canola oil. I don't tell them to do that, although I don't tell them not to. Most of them gravitate toward butter and olive oil because I recommend that. But there are a lot of people who have commercially based products, the salad dressings, things like that have those oils, and they do fine. So I question whether the amount that's used in daily practice by people is enough to cause a problem. So keep the carbs low. These other things are a little less important, but still, I mean, if you can pay attention to that, great. I found that in my area, most people can't or don't want to take the time to make their own salad dressing without those commercial oils. Most people want to have some sort of fast food product that has all this stuff, convenience foods that has it, and as long as you keep the amount very, very low, it seems to work on an individual basis.
Great information. And that also leads to another question, which we talk about often too, is what is your take on sweeteners, even keto-approved sweeteners? Is that something that we should be concerned with? Does that impact weight loss? A little sweetener in your coffee, or folks that really to transition over want to have a couple of keto sweets, maybe that they make at home with, say, something like Swerve. What's your thoughts on sweeteners?
Sure. In my area, the sugar addiction or carb addiction, or sweet tooth is the slang term for it, is so prevalent. I need the artificial sweeteners to get people off sugar. So I think it's fine. I think it's a lesser evil. In fact, no, I think sugar is way up here, and I don't even know if artificial sweeteners or even stevia, which is not artificial, but it's not sugar, I don't know if those cause any harm at all. Of course, diet doctor, my friend Andreas Ehrenfeld, who lives in Sweden, gives me a hard time with that. I mean, he says, why do you eat that garbage, Eric? And so he's trying to create the perfect diet that, again, it makes it out of reach to most of my patients. So my approach has to work, yet it has to be practical enough for the day-to-day, average American, at least in North Carolina, probably in Texas too. So it may be okay to have those tortillas. It may be okay, but the proof is in you try it. You could measure ketones in some way if you want, or you just try it and see if you're losing weight over the next week. And if you're not losing weight and the only thing you had is the tortilla wrap, then it has to go. A tortilla or other bread substitute is not allowed at first in my teaching. By the way, I'll give the hour-long class at the keto event in San Antonio. So if you're curious about the details of this, you can have it and ask me questions. There is a video that you can YouTube online that says Dr. Westman Duke Diet. It's the white coat video, it's called, because I'm sitting there in a white coat. In fact, even today I'm sitting in that same chair, same white coat, and giving the same classes. I've probably given it over 700 times now. But it's available as a freemium, meaning that anyone can watch it for free as well. But the Adapt event ends with me giving the same basic talk that answers a lot of these questions, and then you get to ask me questions as well, personally at the keto event.
Excellent, excellent. And I'll make sure, Keto San Antonio, I'll make sure that's shared in the group, that the video that he's mentioning. I can't remember if I've already shared that, but I will definitely do that. And can I ask a few more questions? Do you have a few moments?
Yeah. Well, sorry to keep you waiting today.
No, it's quite all right. Another question is about protein. Within the keto community at large, and also within Keto San Antonio, there seems to be an ongoing debate about the amount of protein that we should be eating. Some say that you should eat at least a certain amount, and then other folks are a little bit more afraid of protein and the impact on blood glucose. Can you give a little bit of your take on protein?
Yeah. That's one of these, scientifically, it's a unanswered question, honestly. The way we teach at our Obesity Medicine Association meetings, and I'll be giving actually a talk next week in Boston at our Obesity Medicine Association class that prepares people for the exam. We tell people to answer the test that you should have a milligram to 1 to 1.5 milligrams of protein per kilogram lean body mass per day. So that's how you answer the test question. Well, it's not that simple. In fact, if you required some people to eat that much, they wouldn't lose weight. So there's because you'd be giving actually too many calories with all of the protein that go in. So when you're clinically in a medical supervised program, we have much more flexibility, even more flexibility than what dietitians have, because we're trained to monitor people if needed, to help people get off medication if needed. So in the medically supervised program, I let people go much lower on the protein. It's individualized such that I let people determine themselves how much protein to have. Now, but that's only if they take their brain out of it and let their body figure it out. So what does that mean? Well, it means some people eat 3 meals a day, regardless of whether they're hungry or not. You go to the fridge and you open it. I mean, the threshold for getting food is so low for most people. If you were a lion, you'd have to go out and hunt before you eat. So you'd have to even hunt and find the prey. So a lot of what I do is unlearning I need this much protein. So I don't worry about too little protein, actually, as long as people are eating real foods and they're monitoring. Basically, if you're not on medicine, you're not seeing a doctor to do this. If you're feeling well, that's probably the best gauge of it. Now, too little protein, too much protein is the other question. People worry about the protein being turned into glucose, and it might interfere with ketosis. So that's a process called gluconeogenesis, and a very small amount of the protein can be turned into glucose. And I think we overemphasize that a little bit in the book Keto Clarity. Jimmy Moore and I wrote the book Keto Clarity, and I don't think it's as important as we said it was in the book. In fact, there'll be a revision of that book coming out pretty soon. So don't worry about having too much protein if you're eating real foods. You're not using protein shakes and things. Every now and then those are okay, but I prefer people to eat real foods. You can, if you're really concerned, you can do all of these self-monitoring tests now. The minimal one, or the easiest one, is doing the urine ketones, which still works. Just do it in the evening, not the morning. Often there are no ketones in the morning, but there are in the evening. And you can see if you're having too much protein so that you're stopping the ketosis. So that's one way to kind of fine-tune your own metabolism. I think there's also an overlap of too much protein might mean just too much food, too many calories. And after the first year, in my experience, things are great for most people. It's automatic, hunger goes down, you eat less. But if you're on a 100, 200 pound journey, then we have to hit the reality that there's a time when you just have to eat less. And because we're used to eating so much in our era, no one's ever had this much food available as we've had over the last 30, 40 years, at least in the Western society. So I don't really worry too much about the protein. I have to say, as long as you're using your own body signals as the guide of when to eat and how much to eat.
Should people worry about under-eating, possibly not eating enough? We often hear about if you consistently under-eat, that can kind of wonk out your metabolism and slow it down. Should people worry about that?
Well, again, no, because, see, it's normal for your body to slow down its metabolism when losing weight. That's normal. Some people think of it, oh my gosh, my metabolism's slowing down, I'm in starvation mode. No, actually, that's a normal adaptive response. Now, doctors and product manufacturers want to, interfere with normal human responses, I'm afraid. So, I mean, you can, say pregnancy is a disease, and now doctors have to take care of you, but it's actually normal, right? So it's normal to have a reduction in your metabolism. What's really great about keto is, and it was only published 2 or 3 years, so it's kind of new from a research standpoint, is that you have less of a reduction of your metabolism when you're on a low-carb keto diet. So you can't get around that. Your metabolism is going to slow down. So I just reassure people, yes, not everyone gets a plateau, but there may be plateaus, and you just in your pattern. Not to worry about that either. The metabolism slowing down. No, it never made sense to me. I'm trying to get people to eat less. So why would I ever tell someone to eat more to lose weight? I think that's a apples and oranges kind of thing. If you're using a diet that's a calorie-restricted diet, and remember the metabolism slows down more on that kind of diet than the keto diet, then maybe that applies. But it doesn't apply in the low-carb keto world.
Well, oftentimes in our group, we have folks that talk about having trouble with hair loss. That's a popular, or not. It's not popular. We don't enjoy it, but folks that have go through periods of losing hair, and my understanding is it's from not eating enough protein and consistently looking at the keto diet more as a low-calorie diet rather than not eating enough. And is that improper thinking?
Well, I've never seen a study that says that you can treat the hair loss by eating more. I really want to have that kind of examination done before I make a firm statement that says that's a good remedy for it. What I usually do is just instruct people and write on a piece of paper the term telogen effluvium. It's TELOGEN EFFLUVIUM, telogen effluvium. It's called stress-induced hair loss, and it can be any stress. And I don't mean stress like emotional stress, I mean body stress.
Right.
So any effective weight loss program is a stress on them. And so, but what's really happening is that new hairs are pushing out the bad hairs. And so the problem is you have to wait a few months, 6 months, for the new hairs to grow the length of the old ones. So that's usually just an education thing. I know there are all sorts of vitamins and supplements and things like having to eat more and all that, but I don't know if that really helps. I wouldn't say that it would hurt. So problem is by just asking people to do that, it might be that time passed and people got better. So it's always important, if you're going to sell a product, that you have a placebo control before you say that that's what really worked. But I don't see any harm in telling someone to use the chitin or protein collagen supplements, or to eat a little more, as long as they're still losing weight. I think that's a fine recommendation. I don't do that typically, though.
Let me see. I have a question from Dr. Michael Garrett. He's a member of Keto San Antonio, and he's also going to be one of our speakers at the Adapt event. He was wanting me to ask you, what, in your experience with cholesterol, patients on keto, or what is your experience with cholesterol in patients in keto? In my experience, essentially every patient's insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia gets better, blood pressure consistency gets better, weight, central adipose tissue gets better, triglycerides and HDL and their ratio get better. But in some patients, it seems to be a third in my experience, their LDL goes higher or much higher on keto. If you see that, how do you handle it? For instance, do you change fat content or source, increase fiber, consider statins, etc.? He was wanting me to ask that from you.
Yeah. Well, I'll give more details. Actually, if you look at so there's an old way to look at cholesterol. That's the total and LDL. And there's a new way. That's the triglyceride and HDL. So if you roll the dice, actually 2/3. So I don't have the same experience that he does, that everyone gets worse with LDL. That's not, no. I think 2/3 of the time, LDL even gets better on keto. But then that still leaves a third of the people whose triglyceride and HDL get better, but their LDL, the old way of looking at it, gets worse. I don't think it's a bad thing. And I know I think there's a new normal range for people who don't eat. And the new normal range will be a little higher LDL than those who don't eat carbohydrates. So I know a lot of doctors don't understand that. They carry over the old LDL is bad, it's the bad cholesterol, and if it's high, you got to have a drug. And I think that's, definitely premature in terms of the science that's done. So it's a artificial assumption that what's worked among people who eat carbohydrates in terms of drug treatment of cholesterol will work for those who don't eat carbohydrates. The metabolism is very different. In fact, you get kind of a drug-like effect without using a drug on a keto diet. So I don't know. That's one of those things where it's more of a political thing. If the other doctor really holds on to the prescription so hard, and I don't want to make other doctors angry. And another way to say it is that I don't see these drug treatment of cholesterol medicines as being so bad that I tell people not to use them. But again, that's it blends a little bit of, medicine is a bit of an art and some politics to it. And I'd rather not rattle. There are enough battles to fight just by telling people not to eat carbs. I don't want to get into the cholesterol battle other than to give my opinion on it. But I have to say, I've never prescribed a statin medicine.
Great. Thank you.
So,
thank you.
They don't need it.
I have just one more question. I've been getting a lot of messages lately from folks asking me if getting off carb will actually hurt their bodies. Folks are basically get back on keto and go off and get back on keto.
I don't think it introduces any. Going off keto is a bad thing. So to the extent that it'd be like, what's the harm of having a cigar once a month? So there's some people who will freak out and say, I'm never having a cigar. It's terrible. It's awful. It will, over time. Well, if you have it every day. So this is one of those questions in the keto world, now that you kind of know about it, do you have to be in ketosis all the time? I don't think we know for sure. And so I kind of look in disbelief when people just go off totally and, for months go back and eat carbs and regain all their weight. That's the hazard of intermittently having an addictive substance like sugar and starch. It might throw you off, and if you don't come back to the clinic, Thanksgiving to Valentine's Day, you can regain 50 pounds. So I don't worry so much about the metabolic damage. I think it's a small amount, kind of like having a cigarette or something. But that said, if you wanted to minimize, try to make things as healthy as possible, then there might be a small harm to doing it. Sometimes I think that's a question people ask when they want an excuse to be able to do it, which it would be like telling an alcoholic, is it okay if I drink once a month? No, of course not. Alcoholism is a terrible addiction. I think for many people, sugar and starches are that level of an addiction. So if that's the underlying intent of the question, then I know that I don't want you to have even, a cigar once a month or a mixed drink because you're an alcoholic or you're a smoker or you're a carb addict. So I guess my response depends on the person. But metabolically, Jeff Volek at Ohio State doesn't do a whole lot of social media outreach, but he's now kind of the most knowledgeable person about ketosis. And he explains it differently. He would say ketosis is a fragile state, and you don't want to get out of it. So he's been ketogenic as long as me for 20 years, and understands that very small amounts of carbs can throw you out of ketosis. So if you want the anti-inflammatory effects of it, then you want to be very strict about it. Now that's like, but a lot of people can't do that practically speaking, and I'm still waiting for better scientific proof to say we should avoid sugar and starch, to the level of ketosis every day, all day, and until we have more evidence about that. Although the animals, mice, were put on a keto diet in midlife, they lived typically 3 years, and at 2 years, these mice were put on a keto diet, and they lived 13% longer, which was highly statistically, and people would say a human living 10 years longer, that's pretty relevant, For a mouse, it was like, a month. But so the emerging science is pretty cool. It's suggesting that this will help in lots of ways to stay really strict. But to treat diabetes, obesity, there's a wiggle room that the more strict, like ketogenic diet for epilepsy, you can't do. You have to be very strict 24/7, 7 days a week.
So much with it. We really appreciate it. And invite your friends to join us for the Adapt event, which is October the 19th. Have a link. We're just super excited that you're going to be coming to see you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to bring the enthusiasm of, over people that I've been in front of so far this year. Who are keto crazies.
Yay. Well, we can't wait. Thanks so much. Have a great one.
Thank you.